So Godzilla Minus One is the 37th Godzilla film. And for those who are keeping track, it is Toho's 33rd Godzilla film. It's pretty incredible when you think about the longevity of this franchise. It's even more incredible and kind of sad that I could probably count on one hand the amount of Godzilla films that I've actually seen all the way through. And that's including both the American and Japanese versions. So to be clear, I am in no way a Godzilla expert. I was, however, very excited for the opportunity to watch a Toho Godzilla film in the theater, which would be a first for me. And let me just say, I was not disappointed. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Come on. Do it! Do it!
Godzilla Minus One finds Japan already devastated by the war when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant radioactive monster. Just to be clear, that synopsis does not do this film any justice. It's rare that I go to the theater to see a new movie and I'm not fully prepared for what I'm about to see. And to me, a great movie more than anything else should be showing us things that we've never seen before on screen. And truthfully, when you are 37 films into an extended franchise, I'd have to imagine that it's difficult for new filmmakers to find new ways to tell this story from a fresh perspective. But much to my surprise, it feels like that is exactly what Toho has done with Godzilla Minus One.
You serious?
I went into this movie with almost no expectations. I heard a little bit of chatter online about how this movie was supposed to be good, but anyone who watches my videos knows that I'm very skeptical of that pre-release hype. Plus, when you take into account my minimal knowledge and experience with the franchise, it's just not something that I necessarily thought would move the needle with me personally. Well, I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it didn't take long for Godzilla Minus One to convince me that I made the right choice about which film to review this week. The opening moments of this movie set the tone almost immediately and let you know you're going to be in for something special.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
And it's not even that they're reinventing the wheel with this film. I don't even think that's what they were trying to do. What they did was take the wheel how it is and make it their own, all while staying true to what made Godzilla appealing to its legions of fans. From the moment we see this creature for the first time in this film in the opening scene, it is being made abundantly clear that he is being portrayed in a different light, maybe than we've ever seen him before, or at least I've seen him before. We have a not fully formed Godzilla who's maybe as scary and brutal as we've ever seen him be. Monster movies or kaiju films have a way of making death and destruction feel inconsequential, because it's all part of the spectacle. People show up to see people get destroyed by Godzilla. Yet in this moment, you feel genuine tension because of how the filmmaker chose to bring this scene to life. You feel the fear in these human characters rather than just seeing it. And yes, those are two very different things.
We're gonna die!
This Godzilla is brutal. He's menacing. It feels like they added the monster back into the king of all monsters. To me, if you can change the way that people look at Godzilla after all of these years, then you must be doing something right. The other part of this movie that felt very refreshing to me was the human characters, or more specifically, the main character. Now, we've seen how these giant monster attacks affect people on the ground level before, but never like this. Because our main character in this film is dealing with dueling levels of guilt. Both because people look at him as lacking honor because he refused to follow orders while in the war, and because he had an opportunity to prevent a lot of pain and suffering for a lot of people later on in life. But he hesitated in that moment and it led to instant regret. This is a real person dealing with deep emotional Plus, he's coming back to a country that's been ravaged by war. And couple that with the people around him rejecting him, it's just a constant reminder of his failures. The guy was put in a difficult situation, and you feel for him as an audience member.
Why do you cry?
This movie is just as much about the main character finding his purpose in life and learning to live again as it is a giant monster attacking a city. This is where this film sets itself apart from most of the films like it. Human characters in these types of movies are usually expendable. They're cannon fodder. They are merely there to deliver exposition and fill time until the next monster attack. But in this film, the human characters have a greater purpose as it pertains to the story being told. And because of that, for once we actually care about whether or not they live or die. How many times have we watched a Godzilla film and actually rooted for him to kill everyone? Because that's what's entertaining. But not in this film. The well-executed human element of this movie is not something that I expected, but it was a welcome addition and something that kept me interested in this film much more than your average monster movie.
That makes sense.
It's just rare that filmmakers take the time to flesh out human characters like that in a film like this, when the focus is typically on spectacle and spectacle alone. I could only wish that more blockbusters, specifically American blockbusters, would take notice and start to implement the same type of philosophy, because I assure you the movies will be better in the long run. That being said, don't get it twisted, this movie does not skimp on spectacle and visuals. Believe it or not, it doesn't have to be one or the other between story and spectacle. Godzilla Minus One proves that.
You didn't see that coming.
I already mentioned how Godzilla feels more like a menace than he's felt in a long time. And a lot of that has to do with the design of the creature, which I have to admit is both classic and feels fresh at the same time. And yes, he is brought to life with CGI, which is to be expected for a modern film. And if there is one thing about this film that I would say is a negative, it's that the CGI did feel a bit clunky and unrealistic at times, which is normally something that would take me right out of a movie. But this time, there were moments where it was actually done really well at times also. And to be honest, there was enough going on around it that I loved, that I was able to overlook some of those imperfections. Not to mention, and I thought about this point much later, to me the appeal of the original Godzilla, which is still the best Godzilla in my opinion, was the practical effects. To me, the 1954 classic holds up because those dated effects actually add charm to the film. Something that outdated CGI typically doesn't do.
The dreaded stinks!
So I kind of started to look at the CGI in this film in a similar way. It might not always be perfect, but in a weird sort of way, it's the most Godzilla thing they could have done. And I don't mean to make it sound like I'm dumping on the visuals, because I'm not. To me, this film, even with some of its flaws, is still very visually impressive, and very much a spectacle worthy of being seen on the big screen. When I tell you that you feel every moment of Godzilla's atomic breath wiping out an entire city, I mean it. They went to great lengths to make that moment and moments like it feel real and awe-inspiring.
What is real? How do you define real?
To me, this film will go down as one of the more satisfying crowd pleasers to come out and say the last 15 years. To me, Godzilla Minus One is everything that a movie should be. It has heart, it has tension, it's exciting, it's interesting, it's entertaining, and it's visually impressive. It has more character moments and emotional depth than your typical monster movie, or your typical blockbuster for that matter, which only adds to the spectacle and makes you actually give a about what's going on. There may be some odd CGI moments and a couple of plot conveniences that are noticeable, but when it comes right down to it, I was having such a good time that ultimately those things didn't matter in the grand scheme of the film. If you don't feel something while watching Godzilla Minus One, then I'd have to question whether or not you have a pulse. This is easily one of the best theater experiences of the year for me, and that's why I feel confident in giving it the Bill and Ted.
Excellent! Y'all be cool. Right on.